The little girl's lips were already turning blue and her tiny hands were clawing at her own throat, and in the middle of this massive dining room with its crystal chandeliers and 20-foot ceilings, the adults were screaming at each other about what to do while the family dog, a 3-year-old golden retriever named Biscuit, had just launched herself onto the table, sending plates crashing to the marble floor, and everyone thought the dog had lost her mind because she was barking louder than anyone had ever heard her bark, and she kept jumping toward the child's chair over and over again like she was attacking, and the nanny was trying to pull Biscuit away, and the chef was yelling for someone to lock the dog outside, and the little girl's father, one of the wealthiest men in the country, stood frozen at the head of the table with his phone still in his hand because he had been in the middle of a business call when his daughter started dying right in front of him, and nobody, not a single person in that room filled with staff and security and expensive everything, nobody understood yet that the only one trying to save her was the dog they were dragging away from her body. But to understand how we got to this moment, you need to go back about 2 years to when Marcus Chen first brought Biscuit home, and honestly the dog wasn't even supposed to be for his daughter because Marcus didn't buy things for emotional reasons, and he certainly didn't have time to think about things like family pets since he was running a tech empire that had made him one of the youngest self-made billionaires in American history, and he worked 20-hour days and missed birthdays and anniversaries and school plays and basically everything that mattered because in his mind he was building something that would give his family security forever, and he told himself that his 5-year-old daughter Lily would understand one day when she was older and could appreciate everything he had sacrificed for her future. The dog was actually a gift from a business partner who bred golden retrievers, and Marcus had planned to politely rehome Biscuit after a few weeks because he didn't have time for a pet, and his house was filled with expensive furniture and white carpets, and he had staff for everything except dealing with muddy paws and chewed-up shoes. But what Marcus didn't expect was how quickly his daughter attached herself to this clumsy golden puppy with fur the color of honey and a tongue that was always trying to lick somebody's face. Lily was a quiet child, the kind of kid who spent most of her time alone because her father was always working and her mother had passed away from cancer when Lily was only 2 years old, so this little girl had grown up in a massive mansion surrounded by nannies and housekeepers and security guards, but very few people who actually knew how to love her the way a child needs to be loved. And when Biscuit arrived, something changed in Lily that everyone noticed. She started laughing more and talking more, and she would sit on the kitchen floor for hours just letting Biscuit curl up in her lap, and the two of them would share crackers and watch cartoons together, and Biscuit learned very quickly that Lily was her person, the small human who needed protecting, and so the dog followed her everywhere like a golden shadow, always watching, always close, always ready for something that nobody else could see coming. The staff thought it was cute how Biscuit would position herself between Lily and any visitor who came too close, and they thought it was funny how Biscuit would whine outside the bathroom door when Lily was taking a bath, and they noticed how Biscuit would sleep on the floor right next to Lily's bed every single night, even though the dog had her own expensive orthopedic bed in the corner that she completely ignored. Marcus noticed these things too when he actually came home early enough to see his daughter before bedtime, which wasn't often, but when he did he would find Lily curled up on the floor with her arms wrapped around Biscuit's neck telling the dog secrets about her day, and Marcus would feel something twist in his chest that he didn't really have time to examine because his phone would buzz with another emergency and he would disappear back into his office and leave his daughter with the only friend she really had. Now on the day everything changed, it was a Sunday afternoon in early October, and Marcus had actually cleared his schedule for once because his assistant had been pushing him to spend more time at home, and he figured he could at least try to have lunch with Lily even though he kept his phone on the table just in case something urgent came up. And Lily was so excited that her daddy was eating with her that she was talking faster than usual and bouncing in her chair, and she had ordered her favorite meal, which was cut up pieces of grilled chicken with honey mustard dipping sauce, and she was eating quickly because she wanted to finish so they could maybe play a game together afterwards, since that almost never happened. Biscuit was lying under the table the way she always did during meals, right at Lily's feet, and nobody was paying attention to the dog because she was always there and it was just normal, and the chef and the nanny and the housekeeper were all moving around the dining room doing their jobs while Marcus checked his phone between bites and Lily chatted about a drawing she had made at school, and everything felt completely ordinary until suddenly it wasn't. Lily had been laughing at something she was telling her dad about her teacher when she popped a piece of chicken into her mouth, and she must have inhaled at the same moment because the chunk of meat went straight down her windpipe and lodged there in a way that was immediately terrifying and silent, and when a child chokes like this there's no coughing at first, no sound at all, just wide eyes and a look of panic that adults sometimes mistake for playing around, and Lily's hands went to her throat in that universal sign of choking, but she couldn't make any sound, and the adults were all looking at Marcus, who was answering a text, and nobody saw what was happening except Biscuit. The dog knew before anyone else that something was wrong, and she shot out from under the table and started barking immediately, not her normal bark but a sharp urgent sound that made everyone in the room stop what they were doing. And Marcus looked up from his phone annoyed and said something about calming the dog down, and the nanny moved toward Biscuit, but the dog wasn't interested in being calmed down because she could see that her small human was dying and nobody else seemed to understand. So Biscuit did the only thing she knew how to do, which was make as much noise and chaos as possible. She jumped up and put her front paws on Lily's chair, and she was barking right in the little girl's face, and the chef yelled that the dog was going crazy and someone needed to get her away from the child, and Lily's face was changing color now, but everyone was focused on the dog, and Marcus stood up and grabbed Biscuit's collar and tried to pull her back, but the dog twisted free and jumped again, and this time she knocked over Lily's chair completely and the little girl fell to the floor. And that's when Marcus finally saw his daughter's blue lips and her wide, terrified eyes and her hands clutching at her throat, and the whole world stopped making sense for about 3 seconds that felt like 30 years. The nanny screamed and the chef froze, and Marcus dropped to his knees beside his daughter, not knowing what to do because he could run a billion-dollar company but he had never learned infant CPR, and he was shouting for someone to call 911, and Biscuit was still barking, and now she was pawing at Lily's chest and pushing against her stomach, and everyone thought the dog was going to hurt her more, but something about what the dog was doing, the way she kept pushing and nudging and moving Lily's body, something about it was instinctive and desperate, and Marcus suddenly stopped trying to push the dog away and just watched as Biscuit positioned herself behind Lily, who was now on her side on the cold marble floor, and the dog used her muzzle to push hard against Lily's upper back over and over like she was trying to force something out, and Marcus felt something click in his brain about back blows and dislodging blockages, and he got behind his daughter and he started doing what the dog had been showing him, firm strikes between the shoulder blades. And on the third strike a piece of chicken flew out of Lily's mouth and landed on the floor, and the little girl gasped the loudest, most beautiful breath Marcus had ever heard, and then she started crying and screaming, and Biscuit immediately stopped barking and lay down right next to Lily's face and started licking her tears and whimpering and shaking like she was the one who had almost died. The paramedics arrived 11 minutes later and they said Lily was okay, but she was lucky because another minute or two without oxygen could have caused brain damage or worse, and they asked what happened, and the nanny tried to explain about the dog jumping on the table and everyone panicking, and Marcus just stood there holding his sobbing daughter and staring at Biscuit, who was still trembling on the floor completely exhausted, and he couldn't find words for what he was feeling because 20 minutes ago he had almost lost everything that actually mattered while he was checking emails about things that would never matter, and the dog he had planned to give away 2 years ago had just saved his daughter's life while he stood there frozen with a phone in his hand. That night, after the doctors had checked Lily one more time and she was tucked into bed with Biscuit curled up right beside her, Marcus sat in the hallway outside his daughter's room for almost an hour just thinking about all the moments he had missed and all the phone calls he had taken and all the times he had walked past Biscuit without even petting her because he was too busy and too important and too focused on things that seemed urgent but weren't actually important at all. And he thought about how this dog had watched his daughter more carefully than he ever had, and had known something was wrong before any human in that room, and had refused to give up even when everyone was trying to pull her away, and had somehow instinctively shown Marcus exactly what to do to save his child's life. The guilt hit him like a wave because he realized that if Biscuit hadn't knocked over that chair he probably wouldn't have looked up from his phone in time, and his daughter would have died 3 feet away from him while he answered a text message about quarterly projections, and that thought made him physically sick, and he went into the bathroom and threw up, and then he sat on the bathroom floor and cried harder than he had cried since his wife's funeral. The next morning Lily woke up and the first thing she asked for was Biscuit, and Marcus went downstairs and found the dog waiting at the bottom of the stairs like she always did, and he knelt down and wrapped his arms around Biscuit's neck and whispered thank you over and over, and the dog just leaned into him and let him hold her, and when Lily came running down the stairs Biscuit's tail started wagging so hard her whole body shook, and the little girl threw herself at the dog and they rolled around on the floor together, and Marcus just watched them and made a decision that would change everything about how he lived his life going forward. He didn't make a big announcement or give a speech about work-life balance because that wasn't the point, and that's not how real change happens anyway. He just started showing up differently, taking fewer calls during meals, coming home before bedtime, sitting on the floor with Lily and Biscuit and letting himself be present instead of productive, and he started noticing things about his daughter that he had been too distracted to see before, Like the way she scrunched her nose when she laughed. And the way she talked to Biscuit like the dog could understand every word, and the way she would look at him sometimes with this hopeful expression that broke his heart because he knew she had been waiting years for him to really see her. The staff noticed the change and they talked about it in the kitchen, how Mr. Chen was different now, how he looked at that dog like she was family, how he had the vet come to the house to give Biscuit a full checkup and bought her a new bed and new toys and started making sure the chef prepared fresh chicken and rice for the dog every day like she was a guest of honor. But the biggest change was invisible because it happened inside Marcus every time he looked at Biscuit and remembered that moment when the whole room was wrong and only the dog was right, that moment when everyone including him was looking at the chaos instead of looking at the child, that moment when instinct and love did what money and power and intelligence could not. And he carried that memory with him like a weight and a gift because it reminded him every single day that the things that matter most cannot be bought or scheduled or delegated, and that sometimes the ones who see most clearly are the ones we barely notice until it's almost too late. Biscuit is 6 years old now and Lily just turned 9, and Marcus sold a significant portion of his company so he could work less and be home more, and people in his industry thought he was crazy, but he just smiled and said nothing because how do you explain to someone that a dog taught you how to be a father, that a dog showed you what loyalty actually looks like, that a dog saved your daughter's life not because she was trained to but because love doesn't need instructions? There's a photo in Marcus's office now, not of his awards or his buildings or his famous connections, just a simple picture of Lily asleep on the couch with Biscuit's head in her lap, both of them peaceful, both of them safe, and sometimes when Marcus is feeling overwhelmed by everything he has to do he looks at that photo and remembers that the most important job he will ever have is the one that no amount of money can help him with, and that the best teacher he ever had walked on 4 legs and never asked for anything except the chance to love his daughter. I wonder sometimes what would have happened if Biscuit hadn't jumped on that table, if she had stayed quiet and waited for the adults to figure it out, if she had listened when they told her to stop, and the answer makes my stomach turn because we were seconds away from a completely different ending, seconds away from a story that would have destroyed everyone in that room forever. So I guess what I want to know is this: have you ever had a moment where an animal in your life knew something you didn't, where they tried to tell you something important and you didn't listen at first? Because I think those moments happen more than we realize, and I think this story is worth sharing with anyone who has ever loved a pet or raised a child or wondered if there's more going on behind those eyes than we give them credit for. So if this story made you feel something, please pass it along to a parent you know or a dog lover in your life, because sometimes the best stories aren't about heroes with capes, they're about heroes with paws who never stop trying to save the ones they love.